lies! You're just saying that to trick me again! From the moment I was brought here, everyone despised me. I tried, but it was over before it started!
So even if the whole world speaks ill of you, I'll tell them they're wrong. I'll defend you.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News Marathon Night. Rising of the Shield Hero. I'm sorry, but if you guys are following these podcasts properly, I just barely got done screaming WTF as many times as I possibly could for Fruits Basket, so I'm a little winded. But I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's having an awesome day, and joining me is my lovely wife, Andrea. Andrea, we can at least say that things get better from here. Are we ready to talk about more Shield Hero?
Yep.
See, it's funny, because last week, the last time, the WTF moments were in Shield Hero. Not necessarily in Fruits Basket. And then we have this week where Fruits Basket has the WTF moments, and this one has a little bit better. Okay, so let's go ahead and start things off with Episode 4, Lullaby at Dawn. So, this is actually kind of leading from Episode 3, where we dealt with technically the second wave of catastrophe, but the first one that the heroes deal with. And so they're all being sent back to Melremark to get their rewards. And King Melremark decides to hold a party in the honor of the heroes, but I think he basically makes it very clear he is holding it only for the spear, sword, and bow heroes, not for the shield hero. So everybody's just kind of talking to the party members, or the party members and the heroes of those three. Whereas Naofumi is off in the corner, looking at a window, isn't really paying attention, doesn't even want... Safe to say he doesn't want to be there at all. And Raphtalia is enjoying herself, thankfully. She actually goes and tries some of the food, and ultimately goes over to Master Naofumi and tries to get him to try some of the food, and he's not interested. But while he's doing this, Princess Malti, or Mine... Which do we want to go with? Malti or Mine?
It doesn't matter.
Let's do Mine, because as you're gonna find out later, she has a sister, and the sister has a very close name. So Mine goes and talks to the spear hero, Motoyasu, and explains that she's found out that Raphtalia is a slave. And so she points that out to Motoyasu. Motoyasu, being the lolicon that he is, and potential furry, he immediately challenges Naofumi to a duel to win Raphtalia's freedom. Which Naofumi refuses, but King Melremark makes him accept. First of all, bullshit! That's not how that works. The king doesn't get to make you accept. You have to do that yourself. At least the way that I understand it. Maybe the Middle Ages it was different. But yeah, so they actually engage in a duel. What did you think of the duel? Because I mean, ultimately, we can't explain it on a podcast. What did you think of the duel as it went on?
Well, it's a duel's a duel.
I would say when it comes to sheer power, Motoyasu wins throughout. All right, he's got the power of the spear and all that. But when it came to sheer tactics, I want to give that to Naofumi.
Yeah.
I mean, for crying out loud, like, we got to see a couple of the other shields that he has been able to get. By the way, did you like the shield that he apparently got from the two-headed dog?
Oh, yes.
The two-headed dog shield? I like that. They basically showed that he got that from the monster. And in turn, it actually, like, lashes out and attacks things. So that was kind of cool. But the best part of it, as far as I am concerned, was when he trapped Motoyasu in a shield prison with all the little
balloons.
The little balloons, and just like, ow, ow, let me go, ow. That was great, just to have that moment. And even the sword and the bow heroes are like, I mean, like, Naofumi looks like he's holding his own. But as much as I like that moment, ultimately what does happen in the duel is that I think it was during the shield prison, a gust of wind magic comes at Naofumi, which we then later find out was mine. So this was a one-on-one duel, and mine interfered, and ultimately that allowed for Motoyasu to hit a lightning spear, or I think that was what it was, or a chaos spear, one of the two. And he won the duel, because he defeated Naofumi. And so at that point, we get to have kind of a multi-tiered reaction here. The crowd seems to have bought the spear hero has won, even though some are actually arguing, you know, like, where did that gust of wind come from? What's interesting, though, is that the sword and the bow hero get up out of their seats and they start walking away, almost as if they don't care, like they're not invested in it. And when Raphtalia comes out and accuses mine of interfering, they in turn just basically blow that off of like, oh, you poor girl, you've just been brainwashed by the now term that they're using is the Devil of the Shield. So you've been brainwashed by the Devil of the Shield. And so at that point they release her. So this is a weird moment that happens. Naofumi, after losing, is basically, I want to say he was right where he was emotionally when everybody turned on him in the first episode. Is that safe to say?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's literally watching them free Raphtalia of his slave crest. And the weird part that's happening is he's seeing Raphtalia at different ages, basically say, like, doing what he doesn't want to see happen. He sees her walking off just like everybody else has, and this in turn makes him want to throw the shield away. It comes right back. He starts screaming, and then all of a sudden a flame comes out of the shield. And we've been seeing this with all of the talent trees with the shield, that there's like a crafting series and a combat series and things like that. Right after that, we see the opening of a curse series. Did you know? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where things got all distorted. So he's dealing with that, but what he doesn't see in the middle of that is Raphtalia slaps Motoyasu and is immediately defending Naofumi and saying, well, your girl cheated in order to be able to win this, because she used magic when this was a one-on-one duel, and is backed up, strangely enough, by the sword and bow heroes, saying that they saw that too, and that technically Naofumi was the winner. Now, the king doesn't agree with them, and the king wants to continue to beat down the shield, but Raphtalia doesn't care, because Raphtalia basically goes to Naofumi's side. And this is actually, in my opinion, one of the most powerful moments in this season, and for good reason. This is why, in my opinion, Raphtalia is a badass, and nobody will tell me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Because Naofumi is just thinking, you know, she's going to leave like everybody else is, and she is constantly trying to tell him, I believe you. I don't think you did any... I know the things that you're being accused of, and I don't believe them. Because the Master Naofumi I know is not capable of this. And ultimately tries to bring him out of this curse series, because it's like enveloping his shield and everything like that. And through doing so, it's supposed to happen, and I guess in the manga it is clear to see, but because Raphtalia already looks pretty old, I guess with demi-humans, they can spontaneously hit the next point of their development, and so she becomes a full-grown woman because of it, because of her love for Master Naofumi. Did you notice that at all?
Notice.
Like her actually growing up.
Yeah.
And all that. Did you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I still never have. Like, and part of that, I think, is because of the Naofumi stuff, where she's being shown at different ages. And so it's just like, it's weird to be able to see that. Because I swear she was wearing the exact same outfit at the party. But there you go. She's a full-grown woman, and she's siding with him, and he even notices that she's changed, and they get to have kind of a warm moment where they get to embrace. And apparently, Naofumi he falls unconscious after all of this stuff, and everybody walks away and sleeps until morning in Raphtalia's lap. What do you think of that stereotype? Because you saw it quite a bit in Inuyasha, where Inuyasha's head would be on Kagome's lap. That's actually a thing in Japan. Like, it's a comforting thing.
I'm not surprised.
No, I'm saying, what do you think of the act itself? Like, is it weird to you?
No.
No, you like it? It's caring?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so they basically kind of just start all over again. They wake up in the morning, and Raphtalia is able to get enough stuff from last night's party to make sandwiches. And this is the greatest way that this episode can end, is they both take a bite into their sandwiches, and Naofumi notices he can taste the sandwich. So, like I said in all of these previous episodes, he hasn't been able to taste anything since he was accused of raping Mine. And now he can taste this, so something has definitely happened to raise his spirits and ultimately make things for the better. And that's kind of how this episode ends. So, that being said, final thoughts on Lullaby at Dawn. I love this episode.
It was a good episode.
And I will make an argument endlessly that if you want a strong female character, look no further than Raphtalia.
Mm-hmm.
Raphtalia is right up there along with Winry Rockbell, as far as I'm concerned. She is a badass. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I would have said the same thing.
Yeah, this is what you would like to see in a strong female character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just that she's a badass, she's wielding swords, but she's also feminine and caring. Like, she's nurturing and caring like most women are. Unlike mine. So, at that point, character of the episode, Raphtalia. Raphtalia.
Yep.
And I would give a close second to Naofumi because of his breakdown. That breakdown was hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Also, final thoughts on Sword and Bow. Do we think that they're necessarily on the bandwagon that the rest of Melremark is on the Shield Hero now?
I think they probably have their doubts, but they're not
I think they're not completely won over, but maybe they're starting to doubt the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're starting to question whether or not this is true on it, but I don't think they can be trusted, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would still say, well, you still did this. So I wanted to point that out, but yeah, character of the episode, Raphtalia, this was amazing. And out of 5, if you were going to rate this episode, what would you rate it?
I go 5.
Yeah, straight up 5. This was a great way to be able to kind of, like, I still speak up for the second episode where we got to see the relationship between Raphtalia and Naofumi form, but this solidifies it, as far as I'm concerned. Because even without a slave crest, she defended him, and she called out Motoyasu for relying on cheating, etc. It was a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on into the next episode, Philo. So, this episode starts in the weirdest place possible. It starts back in the slave trade camp, because Raphtalia wants to get her slave crest back.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think about that?
Well, she's determined.
No, did you think that was weird at all? Like, she wants this thing that is supposed to be evil and marking your slavery instead of just being a willing party member?
I don't know.
Well, she thinks of it as a mark of her relationship with Master Naofumi, so she gets it back. And this is really where we get to see the difference between Raphtalia in episode 3 and episode 4, because, well, let's just say she's become a little bit more endowed in that amount of time, and so the slave crest, which was right at her chest, is now in between her lovely boobs.
I don't think it's in between. I think it's just...
Yeah, it's actually on them. It's actually on them. So, but it forms a circle. Whatever. So I love that concept. But while they are there, the Naofumi notices a box of eggs, and he mentions that to the slave trader and says, what are these? And basically it's a lottery to either get a Philolial in this universe. That's basically a chocobo, a giant bird, or if you're lucky enough, one of those eggs is the egg of a dragon, and you can get that as a partner, or you could potentially sell the dragon in the slave trade, kind of thing. And I actually like Naofumi's response to it. He's like, "This is a gacha game, isn't it?"
Mm-hmm.
And the slave trader's like, "What?" For those who don't know what a gacha game is, think Genshin Impact. Games with microtransactions, roughly, is what a gacha game is. So he actually purchases an egg. It hatches, and it is a Philolial. So unfortunately, he didn't win. But they're just now endearing themselves to the little tyke. So they decide to keep the little Philolial and name her Philo. And at that point, poor Naofumi, he has nothing but basically Philo imprinted on Naofumi. So at that point, he's the dad. So he gets to have this little Philolial on his head for a little bit. But while they're kind of resolving their things and Melremark to go out journeying again, we actually start to see a couple of things happening. One is that he's starting to gain a little bit better of a relationship with the other vendors. Not necessarily the blacksmith, but also like with the herb vendor, with the potions vendor, because of what he's able to do. And he's able to work out a deal with the magic shop, for lack of a better term. It's a magic shop, magic reagents and all that. And they get a spell book. Because we also find out that apparently Raphtalia has an affinity for light magic, as well as Naofumi has an affinity for magic. So they basically decide to buy the spell book, but neither of them can read it. So they basically resolve to learn to read it together. So I like that right there. Like they both basically decide we're going to learn to read together and be able to gain spells and whatnot. And while they are doing this, we get a little bit of a montage of Philo grows pretty damn quick. And then she's like full-blown chocobo by the time they get to the village of Loot again. And everybody's so happy to see the village. Everybody's so happy to see them until they see a big gathering where Mine and Motoyasu are here, basically claiming Loot Village as the territory of Lord Motoyasu. And because of this, they are imposing a tax on everybody who enters and leaves the village of 50 silver. Keep this in mind. This village is poor as... So, I like how Naofumi says this, because it's a perfect reference. It's like, hey, Motoyasu, do you know how much a night at the inn costs here? It's like, I don't know, what? 1 silver a night. They want 50 silver whenever you leave and whenever you enter.
Oh, jeez.
If a night at the inn is 1 silver, like does that tell you how much that village earns? It's not much.
Mm-hmm.
It's not much. And so this is going to kill them. They're going to get taxed to death. And so in turn, this is another interesting thing that happens in this episode, and it's worth mentioning now. We presumably, at the beginning of the episode, get to meet who we think is the queen of Melremark. And she's apparently sent her ninja messengers to go and watch the various heroes, but specifically the shield hero.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this relevant now? Because the ninja messengers come out of nowhere and send a separate decree. So the decree that Lord Motoyasu is a decree by the king. But Mine takes a look at the other declaration we're presuming is from the queen. And remember, this is a matriarchy. The queen is more powerful. And she immediately challenges Naofumi to I don't think they decide on a race, but ultimately it becomes a race for the land. And I'm guessing what was in that letter was that Naofumi was declared the Lord of Loot Village.
Mm.
And so at that point, he would be a lot nicer to them, right?
Yeah.
So the premise of this race that ultimately happens is they got, 2 laps around the village, and whoever wins owns the land. And so on behalf of the village, Naofumi takes up the task with Philo. And Philo doesn't like Motoyasu. Can we just point that out? Philo, upon first meeting, decides to give a greeting that's only Philo. He kicks Motoyasu in the nuts. And we're presuming hard.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever been kicked by a horse?
I can imagine.
Now imagine it being kicked in the testicles by a horse.
I can imagine.
I'm pretty sure that ain't working anymore, ever again. So they do the race, and he's on like a dragon thing. I don't even want to call it a dragon, but it looked kind of like that. And immediately we're back to old tricks, as Mine has hired some of the city guards to cast spells to make it harder for Naofumi to win. Hey, look, Mine's cheating again. And so they do a number of things. They create holes, they speed him down, they do everything in their power, and Philo powers through all of that, and ultimately, they win! They win the land, and Motoyasu leaves, holding his nuts, hoping that they're not destroyed. And I love the fact that Mine is like kind of half caring about that. She's more pissed off that they lost the village to Naofumi, and he gets declared the lord of it. He doesn't take the lordship of it, but the villagers decide to reward him, and the way that they reward him is like, they think he wants money, and he's like, no, I'm not going to take money from you guys. But he then takes 2 things. One, they have a covered wagon that they're not using, so they give that to him. And they give him a little gold, like a copper tab, that is for merchants, which basically allows for you to travel to other villages and not pay tolls. So that's kind of how this episode ends. What did you think of... Oh, actually, no, this is not how it ends. They actually start up their journey again, and they wake up in the morning and are surprised by a very shocking moment where Philo nestled up to Naofumi, who is taking watch at night, and when they wake up in the morning, he's sitting next to a naked little girl. End of episode. Final thoughts.
Was there a reason why the Philio looked different?
The Philolio?
Or whatever it was.
Just go Philo.
Why it looks different before the race and then after the race?
We can only presume it's evolution, but what we learn later kind of tells another story. Because we kind of learned that the kind of Philolial that Philo is she can shapeshift. So at that point, she could probably go back into that form if she needed to. What did you think of that reveal with naked little girl?
That was a shocker.
On top of, or on Naofumi. Yeah. Overall, I like the episode, especially since it's Motoyasu up to his old tricks again, and Naofumi succeeds again over him. So I like that concept. So yeah, I like this episode. It's really well done, at least as far as like as a coupling to episode 4, where we had the initial duel, and then we had this race, and even with Mine cheating again, Motoyasu couldn't win. And I also love the fact that we've now established that Philo doesn't even like Motoyasu anymore either. I also love Naofumi when they're walking off to start the race. Naofumi goes, "Hey Motoyasu, how are your balls?" So overall character of the episode, I mean, we kind of have to. I mean, part of it I think we have to give to Philo, because Philo's the focus of the episode and does tend to work out. I also tend to want to give it to Naofumi just because of some of the resolutions that kind of come out of this. Who would you give it to?
One or the other.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and out of 5, what would you give Philo?
Probably 4.
See, I'd be a 3, just because, like, I do think some good things happen here, but, like, things ending in a chocobo race is not necessarily what I wanted to see happen. You know, a duel round 2 might have been better. So that then moves into episode 6, episode 6, A New Comrade. Now, this one is hard as hell to explain because it goes off in so many different directions, but let me give the overall goal of this episode. Naofumi wakes up to a naked little girl on his lap. He starts freaking out. Oh, the girl has wings. Turns out the girl is Philo. So Philo is a special kind of Philolial. She is a queen Philolial. And that's what I was saying earlier, is she has the ability to shapeshift. So at that point, she can take multiple forms, which we're guessing, like, the chocobo form could show up later on, but she also has, like, this fat chocobo form that she's now kind of graduated into. Well, obviously we have a problem. She's naked. So immediately, Naofumi heads to Melremark to go talk to the blacksmith, or the armor smith, to see if maybe he has some armor for her, or, like, can recommend somebody. But, yeah. Because every time they put her in clothes, the next time she shapeshifts, it's all gone. And they're running out of little dresses. So at that point, he recommends her to a tailor. The tailor, by the way, just thinks she's super adorbs. And is willing enough to make a dress for her, but needs some magic thread to be able to make it. So she basically weaves up a basic dress, and they talk to Philo and basically say, you can't shapeshift while you're wearing this dress, kind of thing. And Philo agrees, thankfully. But Philo is very much of a young mentality, so they have to be kind of stern with her. I also love the fact that Raphtalia is starting to be a little irritated whenever Naofumi has to pay some extra attention to Philo. I don't know why, but okay. So overall, this is the goal of the episode: to make some magic clothes that will shapeshift along with Philo. And in order to get that, we need to get the magic thread. So what do we have to go through in order to get here? Oh my gosh, this episode is kind of complicated to explain to people. So they start traveling to random villages to be able to work out deals and be able to sell their stuff. They even work things out with a merchants guild who eventually teaches Naofumi how to gem craft. So at that point, he can make magic gems where he can infuse mana into it, and they can utilize it for themselves. We also have him. They come across a farmer who's trying to save his mom, and Naofumi rushes him to his village, and in turn, says, "As long as you pay me, I don't care about, like, what I have to do to get you there." And in turn, because he can't pay him in direct silvers, he pays him in food. So they get food. They are also taking care of doing crafting and herbs in all the villages that they tend to visit. Another thing that's funny that happens is a bunch of brigands basically try to rob them when they have the Merchants Guild guy with them. And that ends horribly for the brigands, except they can't necessarily jail them because they all know that they were taken down by the shield hero, and therefore will probably be immediately released because the devil of the shield is the greater evil, right?
Yeah.
So, ultimately, what's decided is they threaten them with their lives, and then they take them back to their camp and steal from them. So they load up everything that they had in their brigands camp and take it on as their own inventory.
Man, it makes me feel like I can't even think of the game all of a sudden.
Death Stranding?
Where
Where you steal from the bandits? Yeah.
Yes.
Or you steal from the mules?
Yes.
Yeah, this is exactly what that is.
It
and
feels like it.
I love the fact that Raphtalia is like questioning, is this really what we ought to do? I mean, we're robbing from bandits. I love Raphtalia. She's like the moral compass. But even Naofumi's like, well, but we can sell this stuff, or we can give it back to the villagers that they robbed. And so there's a justification there. While they're traveling, though, we actually do hear some interesting things about the other heroes. So they're all off doing their own quests, right? Turns out Motoyasu went to a village dying of hunger because of bad crops, and introduces a magic seed that apparently saved the village's livelihood. So we have that for Motoyasu. He's doing something good. Apparently the sword hero is off doing monster hunting, because the last thing that anybody heard was he slayed a mighty dragon. And then the bow hero apparently joined the resistance of a neighboring nation, and we're not sure why, but like that's the last thing that anybody heard about the bow hero. So this is going to be important later, I promise. Ultimately, this ends up going to an ancient ruin, which they bring the magic shop owner from Melremark to there. And a lot of people might be asking, well, how are they doing this? Naofumi has the ability to be able to teleport people to specific locations. It's not really explained, but it's another one of those video gaming mechanics that they have.
Fast travel.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. So at that point, they go to this cave, and they find a rogue monster that has made its home there. But before they find the monster, they also find a chest that is empty that has a warning on it. It's basically, if anybody takes what is in this chest, they'll be cursed for all time. Like one of those signs. Don't take what's in here. They go and confront the monster and win. And it was a tough fight. And you and I had a fight about whether or not it was a chimera or a manticore.
Actually, I think it says in like a synopsis, even though I never heard of it, but I can't remember the name.
You can't remember the name? Okay. But when they get there, they find a cave full of the magic crystal that they need, or that the magic shop owner needs, in order to weave magic thread. So ultimately, they get the crystal that they need, and start having Philo use her mana to make the thread, and they make the dress for Philo, a lovely little blue number that kind of goes with Philo's personality. Like I said, it's a lot that happened in this episode, but it's trying to establish that Naofumi is gaining a good reputation with the other villagers. And actually, by the way, I said the name wrong. Is it? No. It was a new comrade. So at that point, like, it's all establishing Naofumi working with the other villages, establishing a good reputation with them, and being able to kind of absolve himself of the lies that the kingdom is telling about him.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, that's going to wrap up this episode. Final thoughts on it. I like it in the sense that you have Naofumi and Raphtalia continuing to learn. They also are learning magic, by the way. Because we actually get to see Raphtalia use a stealth spell, basically cloaking her in invisibility. So we get to see that they're learning from the book. They're learning how to gemcraft. They've basically got their own little business on the side, as well as helping out with the waves and everything like that. And I like the fact that even though Naofumi is still kind of his secluded self, he still doesn't trust this world. He is willing to help. He is still willing to be a good guy now and help out with things. And the perfect example is the farmer. Where he is, like, he's saying, yes, you still need to pay me, but he is willing to be able to rush him over to his mother's home to be able to save her, as well as give her the potion, because, again, he has that increase in potion's potency, and is able to heal her completely. So you see him start to be that nice guy that he was at the first episode, but he's still being the guarded self that we've seen since the events. So I like that. Final thoughts on this one?
It was just a nice little filler episode.
Okay. What did you think about the deeds of the other heroes? Did you think that was, like, good for them, or did you not want to see Motoyasu doing good things?
Well, I don't know on that one.
She has to think about it. That's cute.
I mean, I guess it's okay as long as mine's not involved.
The other thing, too, that gets kind of annoying in this episode is the supposed jealousy that they're kind of creating between Philo and Raphtalia. Because, like, as a viewer, you know Raphtalia is... She's starting to show a romantic interest in Naofumi. And I'm still of the opinion that I don't think that will ever be capitalized upon because he basically raised her. So at that point, he's probably looking at her like his daughter. And I think he even says it in the episode.
Yeah.
It's like, she's like my daughter. And Philo gets called his daughter too. So it's just like, okay, but this is also...
Well, she asked if that was her if that was her father, and he's like, no, I'm your owner.
Yeah, that's right. Because she's like, are you her father? No, I'm your owner. Because and that was Philo, not Raphtalia, that he said.
Well,
that
yeah.
Because she's still like a bird being, kind of thing. But then he gets asked about Raphtalia, and it's just like, well, she's like my daughter. And immediately Raphtalia gets kind of mad about that. What do you think about that? The fact that she's got a romantic interest in Naofumi. Is it squicky? Is it bad or is it good?
Well, it's just kind of a strange thing, but...
It's a strange thing, but would you want it acted upon?
Not right now, I wouldn't
Yeah,
think. Not when
that's kind of the problem.
Not when you're in the middle of trying to deal with all these...
I get that they made her grow up and she's more eye candy now than anything else. I especially love the fact that they actually had to buy her a literal breast... Well, it's not a breastplate, but they had to buy her basically... Don't smack me for this. I don't know what else to call it. It's basically a combat bra. Because she's got like this little leather thing on her chest now that I'm guessing is to help with the bouncing aspect. But I get that they made her into eye candy, but this is still the same little girl that we all saw Naofumi raise and help through illness and everything like that. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I could see a lot of people making the argument that they're not related, and yeah, that's technically true, but I just don't know if Naofumi would ever see it that way. I don't know if Naofumi should not see it that way, honestly. So, but it's a good episode. It just, the annoying part is Raphtalia's jealousy of Philo whenever Philo gets attention.
Oh, yeah.
Because at that point, I'm like, Raphtalia, you don't have to worry about a damn thing. Because every time that Naofumi has to do anything about Philo, he's kind of slightly annoyed about it. But character of the episode, I'm gonna give it to Naofumi. I like how he's changed his personality and is not so guarded. Like, he's willing to talk to other people. And he's willing to establish good rapport with the other villages. Who else would you give it to?
Yeah, I can't see anyone else.
Raphtalia for kicking the ass of all of the brigands. And then ultimately going, is it really right for us to steal from them?
I mean, that was a good quote.
That was kind of a good moment. I love it. She's the moral compass. Out of 5, what would you give this?
Probably 3.5, maybe.
Yeah, I'm kind of there. I'd say a 4. Just because of what they're trying to do. Because in the grand, like, I know more about you, more than you. So in the grand scheme of things, he's doing good. So I can at least say that. But yeah, I'd give it a 4. I think this was a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, that's it for these episodes. So, Andrea, are you still invested?
Yeah.
Are you excited for the next 3 episodes?
Yep.
All right. So when we come back, we will be dealing with episodes 7 through 9 of Rising the Shield Hero. Until then, take care, everybody.